two of the biomechanical principles that we need to master in order to promote safety and effectiveness are in the areas of impulse and pressure. You can see by these two visual examples that the threat of injury here is very real. I'll talk to you more specifically about that. And also the occasion to enhance athletic performance or efficiency are impacted or influenced by particularly impulse. I want to focus in on this young man who's had a spill, and you cringe a little bit to see how he's landed, because he's landed on a part of his anatomy that doesn't really allow him to dissipate the force over time and area. And these are the parameters of impulse and pressure. We'll go into the details of the two of them. If force is applied focally in a very short amount of time, then the threat of injury really is high, because the individual cells and tissues are impacted so drastically. In a way, you can consider this a rapid deceleration injury, and because force has to be dissipated in such a short amount of time, the impulse is tremendously high. And because the force is not spread over area, the likelihood of injury is really increased. So I've said the same thing about 3 times there. You're getting the idea, selling you the idea that you've got to be a student of impulse and pressure. And so injury occurs due to too little time and surface area exposed to the force. Force applied to small areas is a threat to tissue health. So if you look at the formula for pressure, if force is held constant, no matter what, the force is going to be what it is. If it's applied to a very large area, in other words, a large denominator, the pressure goes down. And that means that the tissues, I mean cellular to tissue level to organ system, there's less likely to be significant injury. But if the area is very small, a small denominator, and the force is considerable, then the pressure increases, and blunt trauma or torquing force can result in tissue injury. An example of this is, would you rather be hit in the chin by a ball? This happens to be a very dense ball. Would we rather be hit in this small area, or would we rather have that force applied in a large area? Now, the consistency of the ball, you can quibble about the coefficient of restitution that has to do with how much give the ball has, but let's say that they had the same coefficient of restitution, meaning how hard are they. Let's do it another way. Would you rather take this ball in the chest or onto your sternum, or this ball? Because the area is so much greater here, the pressure will be reduced, and the pain that you experience and the tissue injury that you experience will be radically different. So I'm coming back. Know this, that pressure, when applied over a large area, will be reduced if force is held constant. Now, when this young man falls on his shoulder girdle and, frankly, the side of his head, he doesn't, this happened in a moment of time. He got inverted, crashed into the street, and his area is very small. If he had been able to tuck or even taken it more on his anterior chest, less injury, because there would have been more surface area to which that was applied. The pressure, this man is an athlete who was one of the finest fielding outfielders ever, and he very rarely got hurt because whether he dived to his left, right, forward, or caught a ball over his shoulder, he ended up in this position. He realized that if he spread the impact over large area, he had less pressure. He spread that force over a large area. He would always roll. And this is what we're going to do in lab on Tuesday. We're going to exercise this concept that this athlete performed. We're going to spread force out. We're going to do a judo move called out of the T position and reduce pressure, which means none of us are going to be hurt because we're going to spread that force out over area. Now, please wear activity clothes because we're going to be doing some falling, and you want to be ready for this. The units of measure for pressure are newtons divided by mass, force divided by area, and so no pressure. And then if you'll go to the PowerPoint, there are 2 YouTube videos that will really help you grasp what this is about. These are just pictures that I'm showing you now and embellishing it with words, but this is posted for you. This PowerPoint is posted for you on YouTube, and that'll be worthwhile. Now, we want to transition from pressure. Be ready to define pressure when you come to class tomorrow. Be a student of pressure. Now we want to move to impulse, and there's linear permutation of impulse and angular permutation of impulse. And I'm saying to you here that impulse, let's go right here, impulse equals force times time. Now, in regards to a rapid deceleration injury, accident, could be body. In this particular case, it's a car that rear ends a fixed the bumper of a bus, and in a way, what happens is the time that over which force is applied. This is how drivers are staying safer, because the construction of car, it takes time for this car to fold back this direction. That increases the element of time. We want that to be large. We want the impulse to be large as there is deceleration. In the linear sense, force times time equals impulse. In a rapid deceleration, we don't want it to be so rapid. We want to elongate the time, make the time larger for slowing that down. When it's too small an impulse, the t is too small, then the impulse of deacceleration is small and the likelihood of injury is present. This would be an example of where the impulse is too small. He got inverted, crashed into the ground, didn't spread it over time. All of the force was applied immediately instead of a slow deceleration, a rapid deceleration. And then I want to put it in a whole different context, a linear context. Okay, here we are. Impulse is force times time. This is a game called Jai-Alai that is from the Caribbean, primarily from Cuba. It was a sport that we don't hear so much about anymore, but you can appreciate because of the elongated lever arm. This is called the cuesta. Catching that ball, and then it's thrown against a huge granite wall. And so you remember that the longer the lever, the greater the impulse of the lever. If this player applying force to the ball, the impulse is increased because it takes longer. Sorry to be in between. The impulse is really magnified. If his maximum force is generated, and he's applying that force over greater time, he's going to have greater impulse, meaning he's accelerating that over time. Now, that's a function of how long the arc is, and also how long the ball is in his cuesta. Yeah, the amount of time over which force is applied increases the impulse. And then an expression of linear impulse. The formula for that is, hang on just a second, I'm going to go to angular. I'm going to go to angular impulse. So you can see this man who's shooting darts, he's got a very small amount of time because he's got a very small arc as he's throwing darts. The torquing force, the rotary force, over a small amount of time, as opposed to the man who's throwing the spear, has a longer arc. He's torquing, right? He's cocking, and he has a very long arc, applies the torque over a greater amount of time, and he'll end up having greater angular impulse for propulsion. I'm going to come back to linear displacement and put it in the context of the Frisbee. The length of time that a force acts on a system of motion is impulse. So impulse, linear expression, is force times time. Done that. So here is a man who's throwing the Frisbee for distance. What should his most effective impulse be? Well, he should hang on to that Frisbee and take it through a very long arc, to increase his impulse. He's got a finite amount of force, and let's say that he's good at applying that force to the Frisbee. The longer he's applying that force to the Frisbee, the greater the impulse, the greater will be his sending power. Contrast that with, here we are on a Frisbee course, and there's just a little putt to make. Well, we don't need big impulse. We can be in touch with that for a short amount of time. It's a small arc. So we've dealt with the efficiency and safety of movement relative to avoiding injury through having force spread out over time and area. Time is relative to impulse, area is relative to pressure. So no impulse and pressure, and bless you guys. Thanks for being so motivated to study. Bless you. Bye.